Welcome to Canada's court. Well, it wasn't the start the Canadian women were hoping for. They lost 75-54 against the home team, France. Canada struggled to score, including a 2-point second quarter. Coach O is here. He's the host of the Project 365 podcast and our guide to Olympic basketball. We're going to be recapping all these Team Canada games, both on the men's and women's side. Now we even have almost matching shirts here, Coach. We're up in
Hey,
our game now, eh?
we're right here. We're right here.
We didn't even plan this. We didn't even
we
plan
didn't plan
this.
this.
This is we're good here, but unfortunately, not the result the Canadian women were hoping for. How'd you kind of just broadly? How'd you feel about coming out of that game? What's your how do you feel?
Yeah, no, definitely tough draw. You're playing against the host team, so it's you're going into a hostile environment. I think that's where, from a team standpoint, we want to make sure that we stay connected as much as possible. Connected in everything that we do, connected with the high fives, connected with the communication, connected with our shot selection, right? Understanding that not everybody is going to be able to be the hero. You got to trust the game plan. And, when you face that adversity, you got to rely on each other to be able to get through the tough times. So
Yeah,
obviously, like not the result we would have liked, but again, it's a lot of basketball to be played.
absolutely. But each game so essential here. We'll talk about the offense, which is obviously a big part. Canada struggled to score. They shot 32%, only scored 54 points. We mentioned the 2-point second quarter. How do you kind of feel about their offense? What do you think about their shot attempts? I guess. What do you think about the attempts they were getting?
So, especially in that second quarter, you felt like offensively we were looking for comfort by running our sets, and a lot of our sets are ran with Shea Colley at the point. You felt that that's what we kept on going to, but because France was doing a good job at pressuring, picking us up full court, that led to us starting a lot of our possessions late in the shot clock. So when you start late in the shot clock and then you start getting maybe a little inch of an advantage, it becomes a bit hard to be able to generate quality looks. Because when you don't have quality looks, we've been talking about this like the whole time. It doesn't change. The game is connected. Once you don't get quality looks on the one side, the rhythm of the game kind of shifts to the favor of your opponent, which is why France ended up ended up getting more quality looks.
Yeah, and not only that, not only was Canada struggling to hit their shots, they were even struggling to score, like get attempts off. I think they had 25 turnovers over the game. How much does that also kind of disrupt the rhythm of how you're playing if you're already struggling to score, struggling to put it through the hoop, and now you're also getting less shots at it?
Well, for sure. Well, put it at this, right? You got the game of basketball is so interesting because you have to think about it from both sides, right? So offensively, if offensively the team is a bit too predictable in what they want to do, defensively you can kind of overpressure a little bit to use that to their to your advantage. So defensively, what France started doing is that France started pressuring up and sometimes over pressuring because they knew that Shea Colley was not going to break the pattern of the play, right? So offensively, it was hard to get into a rhythm because you're kind of trying to set up your offense from a specific point, but you're not able to get to those the specific points that you were getting to. So all that ended up being very connected. And like you said, we're not getting shots off. And then even if we are, boom, it's a long rebound and France is going the other way. And now they score, and now they get an open shot. They can set their defense. So now we got to play against another set defense, right? So if I'm sitting in the Canadian locker room right now, I'm on the coaching staff, what I'm going to focus on is definitely early offense, right? You hear a lot of teams talking about that early offense. How early are we able to counter what other teams are going to do? Because the reality is this. Teams saw that Canada struggled in the half court. Canada struggled versus the ball pressure. So expect that in your next two games. how early are we able to just create an advantage or release the pressure off of our ball handler? If we want to run our offense with our main point guard, cool. But how early are we able to kind of like free up the point guard early in the shot clock for us to be able to get quality looks, which is what we didn't get in this.
Now, Coach O, that's one solution. What are some other, if you're in that locker room, what else are you kind of suggesting in terms of kind of flipping this game and going ahead to the next one? We'll talk a little bit more specifically about Australia in a bit, but what for the next game, what do you think they need to work on besides what you just said there?
Oh, you hear a lot of coaches say, let your defense fuel your offense, right? Being able to keep the shell, right? We have this thing basketball-wise that we practice every day, shell defense, right? We don't want to let people get to the middle of the paint, right? That's the shell. How much are we able to keep the offensive players in front of us and prevent the ball from getting to the middle of the paint? If the ball gets in the middle of the paint, what ends up happening is that you have to rotate, and that opens up for everybody else. Your defense at the point of attack has to be solid, right? So you got to make a decision early on how you want to guard ball screens, how you want to guard the penetration off of the perimeter, right? So there's different things that we're able to focus on, but if I am in the Canadian locker room, those would probably be my top two. Obviously, everybody's going to say the turnovers. That's one thing, but as much as I can focus on taking good shots, setting up my defense, and being solid on the defensive end, offensively, things will open up.
And I felt like, obviously, there was what you said about the ball pressure in Canada needing to kind of speed things up a little bit, but they were getting good shots for a lot of the game. It wasn't that, they were taking awful shots. Now, sometimes they were taking shots later in the shot clock, higher pressure shots because the defense was strong, but there was also a lot of opportunities where they had the open look. They just weren't hitting them. And, basketball is a game where it's a make or miss game, right? I mean, it's cliche, but it's true. So I think there is some hope in that too, that, this is hopefully Canada's worst shooting game, right? We got it out of the way. First game of the Olympics, we got our bad shooting game. That's not how you want to start, obviously, but it's out of the way now. I would expect that Canada isn't going to shoot this bad the next game when they play Australia. At least you got to hope. Otherwise, you're going to be having a tough time in the Olympics.
No, absolutely. And I'll give you some numbers. If you're looking at just number-wise for the game, right? Canada won the first quarter 18-15, right? So that's a +3.
They were looking strong in that first quarter.
So that's a +3. In the third quarter, they won it 16-15. So that's a +4, right?
Yep.
They lost the fourth quarter 22-18. So for the whole game, we're at a 0.
Yeah.
The glaring part is if you're watching film, you're going to watch it that second quarter because in that second quarter, France, 23 points. The Canadian women's side only had a basket. 2.
That's tough.
That's it.
They couldn't. Canada tried to make a few runs, but France did a really good job at just kind of maintaining that lead and maintain their composure, which is, a lot easier to do when you're up 20. It's not a bad position for them to be in.
No, absolutely. And kudos to them for playing with the lead. But again, going back to what we want to focus on the Canadian side is what happened in that second quarter that made us, in a way, I'm going to say it, lose the game in a way because that's the whole game right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Couple things that they did pretty good that I think they'll go back to is we kind of jumped the defense up a little bit, right? Where it's like we would sometimes go to man to sometimes I'm going to call it kind of like a matchup zone where we would leave Kayla Alexander in the paint just to be able to disrupt a little bit, or she would play a little bit lower on her player, right? So we were showing bodies. We were doing a good job at kind of like throwing the rhythm off. But if we are just thinking about it, like just turnovers, right? It's hard. Canada finished with a total of 25 turnovers and France finished with 10, right? So just even in possession-wise, you're giving France more opportunities at the basket than you are, right? Yeah. So connecting everything back together, it's definitely not wanting to play against a set defense all the time coming down the court, which I think will be one of the main emphasis, more point of emphasis.
Aside from the struggles, was there any players that you kind of thought stood out to you as players who, despite the tough loss, were able to stand out in that game?
Definitely Kia Nurse. Kia Nurse has always been solid. She's going to give you solid numbers offensively. Just she plays really well within this system. This is like someone that's used to the Canadian system. Finished the game. She played 27 minutes. Finished the game with 11 points. She had probably hoping that she could get on the boards a little bit more. But that's just because a lot of times she's going to be the person who is given the task of guarding the best player on the other team, right? So a lot of times, like, you don't want to, when you do a good job at either not letting the player take the shot or letting the player take one shot, you don't want to get disconnected a little bit to go grab a rebound you miss, and then you give that player something open, right? Yeah. So there's a bit of understanding, especially that she was guarding Mary Johannes in this game. But I definitely think that Silas Swords, I think in the 10 minutes that she played, listen, being a teenager and playing in your first Olympics, right? It's like, I'm happy that the young players that we have, and not just Sila, but Kassan Prosper, just being able to go into the game, and it seems like they're very composed. So to me, that means two things. That means that their teammates are giving them the confidence that they belong on the floor. But I think, too, that means they have established roles with the organization right now that makes it a bit easier for them to operate when they're out there. Because I don't feel like they were they were in negatives, if that makes sense, when they were on the court. I do feel like they showed that they do belong on this roster.
Yeah, they certainly aren't there, and I've said this a few times, even when talking about the Olympic qualifiers, is that they're not there. When you're going to the Olympics, you don't have any spots, any development spots, right? It's about, can we medal? When you're a team like Canada, it's about, can we get on the podium, right? Can we win every game? So you're not, and maybe there are some players on the end of your bench that you're hoping, just to be around, but you're not giving 10 minutes to someone that's there just for development. And so the fact that they can come out there, not be negatives, hold their own, that speaks a lot to, both their future with as a basketball player, but also the future of Canada basketball, that you can have those players and those options. That's really important going forward.
No, that's the depth that what we have, and we've made huge strides, as a country. On the women's side, we're used to being in the Olympics, right? We're used to like being at the top of the world ranking. So it's exciting to see these young players go into this environment and still feel like they can produce. That means that the system and the farming system that we have is paying dividends, Phil.
Absolutely. And fun for us means we can watch more basketball. Looking ahead, let's talk a bit about the other game in the pool that was today. Nigeria beat Australia. I don't think Canada was expecting that. I don't think most people were expecting that. That's got some serious implications.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely one of those things where it shows how just basketball around the world, like everything is just so involving, right? Like you can't have off days, right? This is also kind of like this I guess wake up call, because we have to put ourselves in the situation on the Canadian side that every game from now on really matters. And even if, knock on wood, things don't go well in the second game, you still have an opportunity in the third game, right? So everybody, the world is catching up. So it's an exciting time, but again, you got to be ready to perform.
Yeah, and I mean, Canada, as we mentioned, the Olympic qualifiers where they barely got in, they've certainly learned that you're not out until you're out, but they certainly want to come and bounce back. So their next game is versus Australia. That's on Thursday. They beat Australia in the warm-ups, as we just mentioned. Australia lost to Nigeria. They also have a key injury to Beck Allen, I think it is. how do you feel? We've watched this game. Do you have a little bit more confidence if you're Canada, knowing that, okay, yes, we had a bad second quarter, as we talked about. That wasn't good. That lost us the game. But like you said, through the rest of the game, we played with them. Our third quarter, our fourth quarter, we stuck with it. And important to note for FIBA, usually if you're watching, say, an NBA game and you see that a team lost by 20, you're thinking, okay, well, so for the fourth quarter, the bench played the whole time on either end. That's not the case here, right? Because seeding, not just seeding, but the point differential is so important that neither team took off the gas. You're playing your best players the whole game.
No, absolutely. And if you got to think about it too, I could almost say like from a psychological standpoint, if you're Canada, you feel like you competed with a top team for the whole game except the second.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Which is something to look forward to, because I don't think that you're going to score 2 points. You probably, like, this is probably your worst quarter of the tournament.
Yeah. It's got to be.
No matter versus who you play, right?
Yeah.
So to say that, and that was basically the point that plays itself out for the end result, I think mentally you're kind of telling yourself, okay, like, there's definitely something there, but that's going to be the biggest issue right there. It's going to be to focus on how can we get into our offense as quickly and as effectively as possible. I know that we really want to set up our offense at the top of the key, but there were situations where Shea Colley was starting the offense with 12 seconds on the clock, right? So going back to what it was, to answer your question, like, yeah, every game matters, but you go into your next game because it's not every game is not siloed. They all connect together. You go into the next game knowing that you basically played 3 really good quarters.
Yep.
So that translates to the next thing. And also, to be honest, a lot of the flaws that happen in that second quarter are stuff that we can control. Yep. So it's the best of both worlds, Phils. I don't know. It's the best of both worlds. You learn, but you can move on.
People are going to start calling us the optimistic duo. We can always find something positive. But I think you're right, and you mentioned a very good point at the end there, is that stuff that's within Canada's control. Yes, France's defense was awesome. Like, you got to give them the credit there. But it's not like there's something broken with this team that you're thinking, oh, we don't even deserve a spot here. We can't play here. Like they're not that far off from being the team that you want them to be. So if they clean some of those things up for the next game, they're right back in it. Now, Australia, they're going to come out hungry, right? They've lost to Nigeria. They're going to come out and they know that the other game they have to play is France. They're going to be it's going to be a huge game for them, right? So Canada's they can't have another quarter like this, though. That's the thing, right? Even if it's a 4 or 6 point, you can't have another quarter like this for the rest of the tournament. Otherwise, we won't be doing too many more of these podcasts.
No, that's it. So I'm very optimistic.
I'm glad.
And last number that I have, just even in terms of like just the possessions per game, right? We see like this ended up being how much is it? 21 point loss.
Yeah.
We lost by 21. Yeah. So 21 point loss. The total number of possessions, right? We're talking about shots at the basket. Mm-hmm. France had 70. Canada had 53. So that's you got to give yourself. So you got to give yourself a chance to be in these games. So,
yep, that's a good point. Well, we're going to be here. We're not going away. We're not giving up. We're going to be here, obviously, on Thursday for the Australia game, but we'll also be podcasting right away tomorrow morning. Canada on the men's side, they are playing. Oh, I should have taken a record of who they're playing. Who are they playing tomorrow? You must know. Tell me.
Tomorrow, Canada is playing Australia.
That's it. I knew that. We're playing Australia. I also notice in just Olympics wide, we're getting matched up with France a lot, which is a little tough, seeing as they're the home team. But I just watched the women's rugby team beat France in France, so it's a good feeling to beat the home team when you can do it. But it's a tough position to be in. I'm not sure what's going on here. Why we got to play France so much? They've got some intense fans. It's loud. You can hear it when you're watching. It's a loud atmosphere.
No, absolutely. But you got to think that after a game like today, you passed the biggest storm
Yep,
in their eyes, right? So like, hey, I know our ladies are going to be up for the task, so
absolutely. And
excited for it.
we'll be up to watch it. We don't have nearly as hard work. We just got to watch and talk about it. So I'm happy about that. But yeah, we'll be back podcasting again tomorrow. This is, if people like listening to podcasts about Canadian basketball, this is a good time to be alive, because we'll be talking about the men's game versus Australia. You should look for that in the morning. We'll have it up for you as quick as we can. And then we'll have the women's game on Thursday, of course. But lots of great basketball to watch, lots of Olympics to watch. We got some more gold medals, which is fun outside of the basketball court. So, it's a fun time to be a sports fan, Coach O. Looking forward to chatting with you more tomorrow.
Oh, yes, sir, Phil. Always a pleasure to be on Canada's Court.